All right. Alex Martin, welcome today. Thanks for giving some of your time to us. And just wanted to introduce you. You're running the Golfweek Junior Tour, and definitely one of the best tours in the Midwest. And appreciate you giving some time to us.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Doug.
So I know you grew up in the Cincinnati area, played junior golf here, played college golf at Indiana, and still playing at a really high level with playing in national championships with the PGA. And let's talk a little bit about your career and where you're at and going forward.
You want me to just start from the beginning?
Yeah, well, just blueprints. Yeah, just share a little bit about you.
So junior golf-wise, highlights would be I won the Ohio Junior back in 2004. Same year, made it to the U.S. Junior, made it to the round of 32 in match play. After that, college-wise, I have 2 college wins, one at Olympia Fields, which is Illinois' tournament, one of the bigger college tournaments in the country each year. And then one Xavier University's tournament down in Naples, which I don't think exists anymore, but they moved it around kind of Florida and Puerto Rico for a while. Won the 2009 Ohio Am, and then probably the pinnacle of my golf career was qualifying for the 2010 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. So that was kind of the pinnacle of my golfing career. I guess added 2019 PGA National Club Pro this last year. That was another pinnacle for me to kind of make it back onto a national tournament stage for me. But 2010 U.S. Open would have probably been the peak of my golfing abilities. So.
No, it's great. That's awesome. Great experience. Learned a lot too, I bet, right?
It was, yeah. It was. It kind of felt like learning how to swim by getting thrown in the deep end. Is kind of what it felt like. So, looking back on it, there was definitely more panic than preparation. I think in the whole thing, it was I had played in the U.S. Junior. I played in the U.S. Am in 2000. I think that was 2007. And both of those were out of Olympic Club. The biggest difference, obviously, with the U.S. Open is just the fans, just that feeling of claustrophobia, which you can't really describe. Most of the time you're on a golf course and it's a big open space and you feel like, it's just kind of you and a few other people out there. But U.S. Open is quite a bit different, especially with Pebble Beach being such a small venue. It's kind of hard to describe, but it was just mostly kind of that feeling of claustrophobia and feeling like everybody's right on top of you, and just all that added pressure. Awesome experience, though. Went out, got to play 3 practice rounds, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Played with Fred Funk, played with Eric Axley, Ryo Ishikawa, David Toms, and then even at sectionals for the U.S. Open, when I was doing my qualifying for the 36 holes, I got to play with Rocco Mediate. And then when we went into the playoff, I was with Davis Love III. So got to play with a bunch of, heroes of mine, growing up. And got to play 9 holes, David Toms and I, just me and him, on Tuesday for the practice round. And super cool guy, was able to talk me through kind of what he did when he was coming out, playing professional golf, and how he traveled and things like that. And so it was just a really, really cool experience. I tried to soak up as much of it as I could, and that might have been part of the problem with tournament golf. You really want to try and keep your head down, and it's kind of what we've seen with Tiger, how he tries to limit the distractions and really manage himself personally. And I think that's, what having just gotten that glimpse of what he does on a week-to-week basis, I can really appreciate how managing yourself personally during the week of a tournament, before and after, really affects your tournament results and how you are able to perform. A lot of people don't really even think about that and kind of just maybe roll into a tournament, play a practice round, and then trying to hit the ground running. And when you're at a tournament of that level, trying to perform, at your top 1% or 5% of what you're able to be able to do, it's everything's in the details. And just yourself physically and mentally are in the right place Thursday morning, come tournament time. So
Right.
that was one of the biggest things. It was a lot of, you could almost say, non-golf course related things that I learned from that experience. And with being a PGA professional now, my goal would be to make it back to a PGA championship through the National Club Pro. And if I were ever able to do that, I think I've got at least a game plan of what I'm going to do now, which is going to be much different. It's going to revolve around, managing, who's coming out with me,
Right.
making my world as small as possible, because it's very easy to get lost in the distractions that are going on for a tournament like that. So it's just kind of a neat experience that, that I hope to have again one day. And if I don't, I had it, and it was an amazing time and experience as far as golf is concerned.
No, that's great explanation there, and sounds like you learned a lot of valuable information and are paying it forward, and you would definitely tell yourself maybe some few things differently that you learned now before you actually had the experience.
Yep.
But you are in the 1%, the 1% of guys that actually got the experience of that, which is pretty special.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty cool. And then, getting to play 36 holes with Rocco Mediate, he's a super cool guy. So I was able to kind of warm up on the range next to him, knowing that I was going to be playing with him, and he obviously didn't know who I was. And the sectionals for the U.S. Open is a very different experience for the pros. It's kind of more of like an amateur event. You have amateurs walking around. There's no ropes, and so it's a very different experience for them. And one of my biggest memories of him was there was like a 5-6-year-old on the side of the range with his dad watching Rocco warm up, and he came over and started talking to him right before his round. He had a Batman sweatshirt on, and he started talking with him about Batman and Superman, and then a minute later he walked over to the first tee and teed it up. And so I think it was kind of neat just to see how human those guys are, and how they're just regular people that have just focused their entire life on golf.
Right. Definitely special, and they've put everything into it.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know about the Golfweek Junior Tour, it is definitely the premier junior tour series in the Midwest. So tell us a little bit about the tour. I know you play some really great golf courses, great venues, and just what's it all about?
So started it in August of 2011. Kind of after I played in the U.S. Open, we actually, while we were there, met with some Golfweek staff members. And my father at the time was involved in junior golf, and they kind of talked about how they were wanting to start a junior tour. And at that moment, I was still kind of back and forth between whether I wanted to play professionally or kind of go into the working world. And it was kind of shortly after that I kind of discovered that I think, professional golf and golf for me is a part of my life. I just didn't feel like I could make it all of my life. And so kind of took the choice to kind of start with Golfweek. And with my father, we kind of worked on getting a schedule together and spent about the next year developing our schedule and marketing and getting together all the pieces in place to start the tour. And we started it in 2011 in August. And then been doing it ever since then. We visit 5 states, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. But as far as our players, we have drawn from, I believe it's up to 35 states, Canada, Mexico, and Taiwan. We've had about, I would say on average, about 50 to 60% of our boys, seniors, graduate to go on to play Division I golf, and so most years it's 70 to 80% of our girls go on to play Division I college golf, and then obviously we have Division II, Division III, and an AIA beyond that. So you would consider us probably a regional tour. We have a national draw and a national name for our players, and we kind of see ourselves as that stepping stone between the local and state level and the national level. That was kind of the biggest thing that we saw back when we were starting, is that there was really, it was a difficult situation for players back when I was playing to go from a local and state level, have a resume and get enough status to be able to get to the national level, really, other than, your USGA junior qualifiers, PGA junior qualifiers, and some AJGA Open Monday qualifiers. There was really never a good way to go from that starting point to the national level. And so we wanted to provide kind of that ladder for everyone in the Midwest to be able to work their way up. And there's even a lot of players that play on our tour exclusively that are able to get Division I scholarships and just play on our tour just as itself. But our goal has always been to provide a stepping stone into AJGA. We have exemptions into the Junior World, the North-South Junior, the Hudson Junior, and a lot of these other national events that we feel like we're trying to get Midwest players into. So that's been our ultimate goal since having started in 2011. Since then, we just try and run a better event every year and run a better tour and offer as much as we can for our players in the Midwest to be able to go as far as they want to with golf.
Right. Well, I think it's a very complex world. Trying to explain how the system kind of works and what's available and routes for everybody. And I think everybody has a little bit different route. But I think what sets you guys apart is you're such a great asset with your playing background and still love for the game and still competing, that you're able to help a lot of families or kids that are willing to listen, obviously, guide them through the process of finding the best route for them and being honest and telling them, look, you need to go to a higher level or you're not quite ready for what we're here to offer you quite yet. And I really appreciate that from an outsider looking in, because it is a very complex world, and I think the ranking systems is very complex from people that aren't doing it every day or seeing it and studying it and trying to find the best avenues.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing about junior golf is there's really no playbook for it. What we see with our families is, especially if you're the first child to go through it for a family, there's just so much to learn as far as rankings and what tournaments to play, when to start the college recruiting process, because it's just so much different than other sports where in your big basketball, football, and baseballs, the coaches come to you. With golf, unless you're a top 100 player in the country or top 100 in your class, you really need to kind of pursue the coaches. And that's maybe one of our biggest things that we've had to continually educate people on, is that they think that the coaches are going to come to them. Golf is so much more of kind of presenting yourself and selling yourself sometimes to college coaches. And the biggest thing with golf is that, there's just so many unknowns. And so I think that is what's nice, though, about the golf world, and especially junior golf, is that parents talk a lot, they share information, and it really is kind of a neat environment where everyone's trying to help each other, even though they're competing against each other on the golf course. So much of it is a small community trying to assist and educate each other when other parents learn from each other. And that was kind of the way my dad and I went through it too. He was able to get a lot of good experience and knowledge from players and parents of players that are now on the PGA Tour. And so we've it's just, golf is a really cool community. It's a lot smaller than people think. When you get out there, especially on the state, regional, and national level, you run into a lot of the same people over and over again. Right. And it's been where a lot of our players have made lifelong friendships and still carry those through to today. And so I think that's kind of what maybe is the neatest part about junior golf, is that it really is kind of a small community. Right,
absolutely. And you're definitely going to run across the same people throughout the traveling, and you're going to follow the same levels, so it's kind of cool to keep seeing the same people.
It is, yeah.
So have you seen any trends changing with tournaments to college getting recruited, the ranking systems, anything that kind of stands out that's kind of new for you recently?
So the biggest change probably recently was last year, Junior Golf Scoreboard, which is pretty much the ranking system in the United States. There's really three ranking systems. AJGA has a kind of an internal ranking system that they use for players to get into their events. Golfweek has a ranking system that really is kind of geared towards finding out who the best top. It really is about 500 to 600 boys and 300 or 400 girls. They don't rank enough events to really have a much bigger field than that. And then as far as junior golf scoreboard, they rank just about every event in the country that can be ranked. And so that's where a lot of players are going to find some of the most information out there as far as rankings are concerned. And so last year they updated their system. It used to be, or it still is, but a player's ranking is 65% scoring average, 25% strength of field, and then 10% your finish in that tournament. Like if you got first, top 5, top 10. And so the biggest change that they made last year was they looked at that 25% strength of field and found out that it was having too much of an effect on a player's ranking. So players that had very similar scoring averages were still ranked quite a bit differently based on the tournaments that they were playing in. So they have taken that backwards. And so I think what it has done is it's really kind of reverted to what is your scoring differential, what is your scoring average, and that scoring average is based off the course rating. So I think that's kind of been maybe the biggest change that we've seen in the last couple of years is it's really allowed for players at a local, state, and regional level to be compared maybe easier or better to those national players that are getting in the bigger tournaments, whereas before those big tournaments were really helping their rankings and inflating their rankings, and it wasn't so much about their scoring average, and now it really is. So I think players at a local and regional level have a better chance of being ranked higher now because of that. And with good performances on the course, they're going to move up in the ranking system.
Right.
So it's really kind of democratized the tournaments throughout the country and made it more just about, well, what do you shoot?
Right. No, I think that's great, a great addition, because I feel like I'm always getting asked the question of whether it's guys in the North or girls in the North competing against players in the South. They have an advantage. They'll have an advantage. I think it should be kind of equal throughout based on your performance.
Yeah, and so in that stroke differential or that stroke average, they do throw out your worst 25% of your scores. So that was kind of their way of helping players in the North that are coming out in the springtime or in the late fall playing in some adverse weather, which we kind of see on our tour. It was a way to help them out in those situations where the weather wasn't favorable and the scoring average went up. So your worst 25% get thrown out, and that's kind of a way to help a lot of the Northerners in that.
Right. Very important. So is there any big event? I know we're kind of delayed here right now, but do you have a certain number of events you try to schedule every year?
We've been growing that number, it seems like, every year. We have typically been, in the last couple of years, around 35, 36 weeks a year, and some of those weeks are doubled up. We'll have 2 tournaments in a week, or 2 sites. So we've had probably 43 or 4 plus events the last few years. This year, obviously, with everything going on with the coronavirus, we have had to cancel and postpone some of our events, and we are right now working to and have already rescheduled quite a few of those for June and July that were affected in March and April. So we're continually updating our schedule page. We just added another event in June just as of today that was postponed from April here. So with our schedule, we usually don't have a whole lot going on in June just because of how much summer events that there are. However, with everything going on, a lot of those events are getting pushed out as well. So we have really kind of filled in all of May, June, July, and all the way even up until November. So we have now on our schedule, we have an event every week, and some weeks two events through the end of November. So
It'll be a busy year.
Yeah, we have a lot to offer this year. So.
That's great. No, I think it's good that we're still able to get stuff in for everybody to compete in.
Yeah, that's been my biggest concern is for all those juniors and seniors right now in high school, just giving them a chance this year to be able to play in front of college coaches and get their rankings up and a resume built. Because that's my biggest worry is that a lot of juniors and seniors are going to be affected by what's going on right now.
Right, especially the USGA canceling some events and so on.
Yeah.
So have you seen, from, you're kind of an outsider looking in, from the game performance, scoring, are you seeing some differences from coaching to kids and seeing performances change or lower scores?
The biggest thing I think I've seen since starting in 2011, because obviously when you're playing, it's a different feel from when you're watching competitive golf. I think the biggest change is just swing speed and distances that players are hitting it now. Just the difference between 2011 when we started and now, our boys and girls that are high school players have just, seems like every year they're adding a few yards. That's kind of maybe been the biggest thing. And I know that obviously in the teaching world that's become more of a focus because of the college and professional levels. Right. It's shown to separate players by quite a bit. And so I think that's kind of where I've seen a majority of the game progress, at least as far as tournament golf.
Right. Sounds like you can always do a better job at coaching course management.
Yeah, that always helps. Course management, I think you can see it in players. They get better every year, but that does seem like maybe one of the easiest ways to improve sometimes.
Right.
But as we all know, golf is about experience and experiencing just the millions of possibilities that are possible out on a golf course and just gaining knowledge in that on how to handle that. Awesome.
Well, I know you guys are true professionals in what you do. If you just share with us a special story over the years of someone that's came through playing some of your events and seen them success and where they've ended up, or something that's cool that's happened to them.
Yeah, so just recently, so Daniel Wederick, he was a player that started on our tour. His older brother actually had started before him, and Daniel was, I think, so you go back 9 years now. I mean, he was probably not much older than 10, or he was probably 11 or 12 at the time when we started to see him when his brother was playing. And so then Daniel moved on to our tour, was player of the year a couple times on our tour. I think he has the most wins as of right now of any Golfweek Junior Tour player. Wow. I'd have to look it up. I think it's over 16 wins with us. And but he qualified for the Honda Classic down at PGA National.
Awesome.
And got to play just this last, I think that was in February that he was in the event. So he Monday qualified and got into the tournament. We've got all sorts of kids, though. We've got some girls breaking onto the LPGA. One of our girls that won several times with us, Erica Shepard, won the U.S. Junior a couple of years back. So now, having done this for 9 years, we're starting to have some of our players graduate onto the LPGA and PGAs. And John Augenstein, former player on our tour that won us several times, almost won the USAM this last year. He was in the final match and ended up just barely losing out. So we're really starting to see some national performances out of our former players, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of the neatest part about all of this is just getting to remember, them shooting in the 80s and 90s with us as a little kid, and then moving on and playing better and better, and then making it now onto the national scene. I think that's kind of maybe the most rewarding part of what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it's you definitely provide the platform, and keep doing what you're doing because it's really good.
Thanks, we appreciate it.
Well, thanks for your time, and if you have anything else you would like to share, please do so. But I think you answered our questions for us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
And, looking forward to seeing everybody here out on the course here, hopefully soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex.
Yep, thanks, Doug.